Knight takes? What's the point?
Yes, this double sacrifice by Magnus Carlsen is so good that even two grandmasters in the commentary box can't figure out the deep idea after Magnus starts the sequence. Now, this was played in the World Blitz Championship. Magnus's opponent is Yu Yangyi, a top 30 player in the world, classical chess, but what Magnus does to him here is just brutal. So e4 played on move 1 by Magnus. We get e5, knight f3 and knight f6. The top Chinese players are renowned for playing the Petrov, and grandmasters have been banging their head against a brick wall trying to find advantage, but watch this. Magnus takes on e5, we get d6, the knight backpedals, knight takes on e4, and here, as of move 5, we have a completely new game where Magnus goes pawn to h3. Never seen before in 18,500 games in the chess.com database. And listen to this reaction from the commentators.
Wow!
And h3 against a Petrov. Why did you tell us, Magnus, all these World Championship matches we were looking for ways against the Petrov, and you never told us about h3?
This is just awesome. Puts a smile on your face, right? So d5 from Yu Yangyi, very principled. d3 from Magnus. And now already on move 6, knight d6 is played and it's inferior. Knight f6 better, but Yu Yangyi not in his prep. So we get pawn c4 now from Magnus. Interesting idea. You know, you could have gone d4 or carried on developing. Now black here should take this pawn really. It's the top move. But instead bishop e7 is played. It's an interesting idea. You give a pawn, but this one's quite ugly, hampering natural development. And this one could be weak long term. But white's significantly better now. Roughly a pawn. We get knight c3 played, defending that extra pawn. And now b5. Interesting idea. Looking for b4, so a3 played. We get bishop b7, pressuring this pawn some more. d4 from Magnus, very natural. b5 now defended, and you can go bishop d3, really natural developing square. But bishop e2 selected. What's the idea? Well, after knight d7, Magnus reveals his point by hopping the steed forward into that advanced outpost, and bishop f3 now on the way as a follow-up. So bishop f6 played, and now Magnus takes a long think here, about 1 minute and 10 seconds. He's thinking of bishop f4, but then there's rook e8 and so on. So instead, he goes for an immediate knight to c6. You can't live with that one there, so bishop captures, pawn captures played, the knight comes to b6, castled, and knight f5. Great move, pressuring that center 3 times. It's only defended once. So Magnus advances the pawn, but now Yu Yangyi chops on c3, pawn recaptures, and he is actually equalizing the game if he takes this pawn with the queen. But he doesn't do it. Not sure why, but something about it he didn't like. Instead, he takes with the knight, but why is this inferior? Well, now look at the fun Magnus has. You can go queen d3 to start with, but bishop f3 played, and it sets a trap. If you take this pawn, there's queen c2, you hit both knights and they can't both be defended. You're losing a minor piece. So the pawn not touched, the knight backpedals, and bishop f4. This is the problem when you didn't take with the queen. You let white get this initiative here. Now the c7 pawn looks tender. We get knight d6, trying to interrupt the flow of this bishop, but now bishop takes on d6. Queen recaptures, queen takes, pawn takes, rook fd1, and Yangyi must have thought that after rook ad8 he was gonna survive here, because rook d4, d5, it looks like you're just in time, because if rook ad1, which wasn't played, well then you go rook d6 and stuff starts getting liquidated. C pawn for d pawn starts heading towards a draw. But what Magnus uncorks here is sensational. Magnus Carlsen finds an exceptional starting pawn sacrifice, the first of 2. He goes pawn to a4. And this is where we get this clip.
a4.
If knight takes, what's the point?
The guys can hardly even work out what's going on here. After knight takes, you don't want to go with the pawn and start opening the b file, ruin your structure. Well, Magnus now reveals his point with pawn to c4. A second pawn sack. B takes can't be played or you lose the knight. If D takes, which was played, well, this is the point. The rooks come off and now c7, and if you go rook c8, looks so natural, then there's rook d1. No time to take or you get mated, and therefore what to do? If you start bringing the king, we'll still check. King e7, you lose your rook, that's game over. Rook takes, you make a queen, that's checkmate. None of it works. So after this move, instead of going to c8, Yu brings the rook back to f8, and now Magnus goes bishop to b7. He's simply making that queen. And if knight b6 to try and cover the square, the rook crashes through. The knight is hit over here. Say you drop back, you can simply take. Rook takes, rook d6. You've got exactly the same back rank problems as before. None of it works. And coming back here, if you don't go knight c8, you try and run the pawns, you're just not in time. Doesn't matter what you do, the rook comes behind. So when we got to here, c3 was immediately played. Great try, best move. Magnus makes the queen. He picks up the rook. He's now an entire rook ahead. But black's got this trio of connected passed pawns. You can't take here. This one then runs too fast in combination with the other. So Magnus goes for this bishop move, cutting off these key squares. The knight drops back to c5. But what if b3 played? Well, then rook takes, c2, about to queen, but the rook comes behind just in time, and you're threatening to brank this king, back rank. So g6 gives some space, but you can just liquidate, pick up the pawns. Lost. So knight c5 was played. We get rook a5 targeting that piece. g6 now on the board. Again, if you try and run the pawns or anything, it's not quick enough. This gives the king some room, but now Magnus takes, lets his bishop drop, and just starts bringing in the king. What to do? Black is paralyzed. Yangyi goes b3, Magnus takes, the king's in time, he's an entire rook up, and here we see resignation on the board. What a game by Magnus, and this was the final standings of the tournament. Magnus stormed it, won the Rapid and the Blitz. If you enjoyed this and want to see another incredible game of chess, check out the video on screen. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.